Hi. Who here tells themselves every single day that they are going to drink more water? Every single day. If you're like me, you forget because your focus is on coffee. And I actually don't drink coffee excessively. This is only my second cup of the day. But I guess I end up focusing more on the coffee than I do on the water. And tonight I made myself my second cup because I actually do have some things I want to get done around here, and sometimes after work, especially at the beginning of the week, I come home and I just feel like I'm going to crash. I worked at the county fair over the weekend, and we were promoting this initiative called Rethink Your Drink that focuses on replacing your sugary drinks with water. And so I stationed myself next to this gigantic water dispenser with ice and oranges in it that looked absolutely delicious. It was really popular. People loved it. I had what I call my bucket of caramel macchiato next to me. It was just a large caramel macchiato, but I feel bad because I'm always promoting these things at these events, and then, but you got to choose between me being healthy and me being happy and nice, I guess. It's been a minute since my last video. I tried really hard to improve my videographer skills. I actually bought this little ring light. Unfortunately, it is from the Target dollar section. So it's a little bit janky and my phone tends to flop right off of it. So I'm back to my little tripod that I was using in the last video and just a generic table light. So maybe I'll be an actual influencer videographer in 10 years, because it's probably gonna take me that long to figure out technology. I felt kind of bad trying to record a new video since not a lot has happened. It has been an emotional roller coaster since the last video, and I think it's probably always going to be an emotional roller coaster. In this case, I was feeling okay after that last video that I recorded, but then I just kind of got down on myself, and I kind of sank to this low, and I've had to pick myself back up again. So I imagine that's not the last time. I'm sure it's going to happen plenty during this journey, but it's been rough, and I'm trying to figure out what my triggers are and trying to figure out how to deal with it. So we did have a second appointment, which is the appointment I mentioned in the last video that I recorded, and it didn't go quite as I'd hoped it was going to go. There were some issues with getting the images that we needed to the fertility center. So at my first fertility center appointment a couple of months ago, I can't remember when that was, they had already been trying to get the images from my original fluoroscopy x-ray that we did, where we found out that my tubes may be blocked. And they were trying to get them there at the fertility center before the first appointment so that they were ready. When we got to the first appointment, they told me that they had been having some trouble getting the images, and they asked me if I could sign a release form, being more specific with what they actually wanted, because the place where I got the imaging, the radiology department which was in a different town, had sent them just the report, not the images, but they wanted the actual images at the fertility center. So I said, yeah, no problem. Signed a release for them. I filled out the address of the radiology place, the fax number. I said exactly what we needed on there. Assumed that, that was all I needed to do. And my second appointment was to be in another month. So fast forward almost a month after that, and it's 2 days before my appointment at the fertility center. I get a call from them, and they say, hey, were you ever able to get those images that we asked for? I thought that they were getting them. I thought that's why I filled out the release. I don't know, they must have been confused or something. So I said, no, I haven't. I would have worked on it if I had known. So then it was kind of frantic mode. I had to call the radiology department in the other town and ask them if they could email the images or put them in my chart online or something. They told me, no, we can't do any of those things. The only way we can get it to the fertility center is to mail the CD in the mail. So that was on a Monday. My appointment was on a Wednesday. I knew it was not going to be there on time. I called the fertility place back, told them that the images had to be mailed and that they probably were not going to be there in 2 days. And I assumed that if that was a problem, they would tell me, and if I needed to reschedule, they would tell me. Not the case. So we just went ahead with the appointment 2 days later on Wednesday. And I had this dread, this fear that when we got there, they wouldn't be able to do anything because they didn't have those images yet. And that's kind of what happened. We were able to meet the doctor, which was good. The last time we went, if you guys remember me talking about it, we talked to I called her a nurse practitioner last time, I think, but she was actually a physician assistant. So we talked to the doctor this time, and he kind of went over the spiel that they probably give everyone. He told us a lot of the same thing that we had heard already from the physician assistant, but we did learn some new things from him, so that was good. And it ended up that we had to have an extra appointment after that because the imaging hadn't arrived yet. So before we left the office that day, we set up a phone appointment with the doctor for the following week. Like I said, it was a Wednesday. He wanted to do a phone appointment the following Monday, assuming that the images had arrived by then. This was frustrating to me for a couple of reasons. The first being that I think that I put too much emphasis and pressure on that appointment. I had really been hoping that we would get, surgery dates locked down and some kind of significant next steps. And I know that this is a slow process and it's not going to be that fast and that easy. But it was just, I think I got myself really worked up, and it was a big letdown for me. So we had the phone appointment the following Monday. The doctor had looked at the images. He told us that a lot of doctors don't even request the actual images. They're fine with the written report. He said that he's really nitpicky about it, and he said that sometimes he'll order the test again, or he'll order like an MRI to get better images, because he really just wants to make sure that he's doing the right thing and really knows what's going on. So I appreciated his thorough approach to it. And I did anticipate that he might want to do the test again, which was what he said on the phone appointment on Monday. He said not to question the radiology place, but he wasn't sure how often they do this test and how accurate it was. And he said, we really do hundreds of these at our office every year, and I would just feel more comfortable if we redid it to make sure that it was done right. I think especially he was really concerned that it was going up one side like I talked about in the last video. And that happened both times that they inserted the catheter. So it was kind of like if my uterus has two sections, it's only going up one side. So were they really able to see this side correctly? So I understand why he's doing it. The frustrating thing, like I said, is that none of this is covered by insurance. I'm hoping that we get to that point in this country more down the road where fertility is covered more and given more assistance, considering that people have babies on Medi-Cal for free all the time. So every visit ends up being a standard cost. Typical office visit, you don't really think about it when you go to the doctor because you pay your, $20 copay or whatever, and that's kind of the end of it. But the actual office visit itself, if it's not covered, ends up being a couple of $100s. So you're looking at a couple of $100 for us going to the actual physical appointment when we thought we'd be reviewing what next steps were, and then a couple $100 for the phone appointment because we had to wait till those images got in, and then on top of that, whatever testing is done. So, there's the cost of my test for the original x-ray fluoroscopy that I got done, and then we're gonna get a second one, so that'll be, an additional cost. it's just a lot. It's a lot to take in, and I am willing to do whatever it takes, but we're kind of just playing it by ear at this point, and there's not really a really solid plan for how to go about everything. We did learn the result of my genetic test to test for like genetic traits that could be handed down to our children. They also did a blood type test on me, which was interesting because they asked me at the first appointment if I knew what my blood type was, and I told them what I thought it was, which was based on a microbiology lab that I had done in college where we blood typed ourselves. Turned out I was right, so yay me, I guess I did okay in science. And then at that appointment where we actually went there and found out that they didn't have the images yet, they did the genetic test on Chris as well. So we found out those results. We also found out the results of his semen analysis and a couple of other things. So I'll tell you about those. The genetic testing was kind of funny. So my result came up with only having one recessive carrier result, and they had tested 288 different genetic conditions. So out of 288, having only one that is recessive, which means that I'm not actively having any symptoms from it, I'm just carrying it and could potentially pass it on if my partner had the same thing. So it was really like a pretty insignificant result, but it was amusing all the same. So I'm going to tell you guys what we ended up having. Mine is called primary hyperoxaluria type 3, and apparently it is like an overproduction of oxalic acid, which can lead to calcium, extra calcium to form crystals in the kidneys, and then it can lead to like kidney failure down the road. So anyways, fun times. The amusing part of that was that it was so bizarre and random. You know, you're thinking genetic conditions, so you're thinking maybe I'm a carrier of, you know, like cystic fibrosis or something like that. And this is what I get. And so I kind of played it up a little bit, the humor of it. It was a little bit amusing going to my parents and being like, who gave me this? So no idea where that's from, no idea who gave it to me, but that is the only thing that I popped up with. And so Chris's test was, you know, we just had to make sure that he didn't have the same thing, because then the two recessives could show up in our child, which I'm not really sure if that one is much of a big deal anyways, but his popped up as, I'm gonna try to read this for you, hyperornithinemia, hyperammonemia, homocitrullinuria syndrome. Which means an ammonia buildup in the bloodstream that can cause damages to the nervous system. So same with him, it was a recessive carrier gene, so I don't think there's going to be any risk for us with any potential children, and that was his only one out of 288 tested as well. So the semen analysis we actually found out when we were in the office, when we went in person. The doctor kind of played it up in a way that we also thought was funny later, because it was very ominous and very, you know, he made it seem like something was wrong, and then it was kind of like, so this is what your numbers are supposed to be, and looking at your results, it was good. So we were making fun of that on the way home, because every single line on the test was like motility, sperm count, all these different subjects, and he did basically what I just described on every single one of them. So the whole time we're sitting there like, what's it gonna be? So his semen analysis was normal, which he was not excited to hear, because he had created this elaborate story in his head where his sample was so potent, the likes of which the lab had never seen, and the lab tech actually went out of commission after running the test because his eyeballs became impregnated while looking through the microscope. So I'm not gonna rip him out of that fantasy land where he's living. We did get some advice for embryos as far as like retrieving eggs and then fertilizing them and creating embryos. I wasn't exactly sure how that worked, but the doctor told us that he always recommends that whatever amount of eggs that you are able to retrieve, you just go ahead and fertilize all of them. He said that the more you freeze your eggs and the longer you freeze them, the less viable they become. So you have a better chance if they are straight out and you just immediately try to fertilize all of them and you get what you get. Because there is a chance that you might get 0. I guess there is a chance you could get a high number, but I don't think that's very likely. So that was interesting to find out. And we found out a little bit about what surgery might look like for me. So it depends on what exactly my uterus looks like, and I'm gonna draw this out for you guys. This is like class time. Okay, so this is what was described to us. This is like a regular uterus. So you have the uterus in the middle, you have the fallopian tubes coming out. These outside parts are just the tissue surrounding. So this is normal, what you see in pictures, this regular cavity right here. This is what I talked about before. It's called a bicornuate uterus. So it has 2 sections, and then the fallopian tubes kind of go up from there. As you can see, it dips down here in the middle, and then this is a uterus that just has a septum. So from the outside, looking at the surrounding tissue, the uterus with the septum looks pretty much the same as a regular uterus. So you can't really tell, looking from some imaging, if it's this or if it's regular. From what we were told, if I have a septum in my uterus, then they would go in and snip through it and open up this cavity like I had talked about on the last video. But if it's like this, a bicornuate, then they can't really snip through this because of the shape of the entire thing. So they would leave that how it is. And if that's the case, and I do have a bicornuate and they leave it how it is in my uterus and they only focus on opening my tubes or removing my tubes, then I would have to carry out a pregnancy with that bicornuate uterus. They did say that it looked like one side was larger than the other. We know there's 2 sections. We do know that part at least. So whether it's from a septum or whether it's bicornuate, we'll have to find out when we redo the test. So if I have a bicornuate and we don't remove the middle part, I was told that there are 2 sides and one side is larger, so if they had to implant, they would implant on the larger side. And the doctor told us that that's usually fine. Babies usually go pretty much to term in that scenario, despite what I had looked up online and freaked out about. He told us that they don't really too often spontaneously abort, so that's good. But he did say the only thing with that is it is very common to have to do a C-section, which I think normally I would be okay with. I typically am okay with a lot of medical things. I don't freak out. I'm not, I think I have a pretty high pain threshold. But I did see a C-section in nursing school, and while I was watching it in nursing school, I remember thinking that I wished that I could have had kids before I had seen that, because then I had this bad feeling that I was gonna have to have a C-section, and it was a horrific thing to watch. I don't want to go into detail if you haven't seen it and you don't know what it's about and you haven't had a C-section before, but I don't really get lightheaded from things anymore, and I definitely felt pretty lightheaded watching that. So hopefully that doesn't have to happen, because I think I would be behind the curtain throwing up and just imagining what was going on. But, you know, if that's what it has to be, then that's what it has to be. And I know plenty of people who have had multiple C-sections, and it's pretty standard now. So if that's what comes, then we will deal with it. And I think that's about all I have to update you guys with. The next step is going to be that we will redo that HSG fluoroscopy x-ray with the contrast solution, and not a big deal to me. I saw a lot of reviews when I was looking up how that process was online, where people said it was the most painful thing they'd ever experienced. I think I told you guys last time it really wasn't a big deal for me. I'm not sure why. I don't mind getting it done again, aside from like the cost is a little stressful, like I mentioned. But that has to happen 7 to 10-ish days after my period starts. I think I mentioned that last time as well. So now I'm just waiting until my period starts in roughly a week, and I'll have to call the fertility clinic on the day that it starts, and then we will get it scheduled and get her done. So updates as I find out, as usual. Let me know if you guys have any questions, or if anybody has any encouraging words. I would love that always, anytime. And I'm not really an influencer, so I don't care if you like, but if you want to follow my journey, subscribe. And I will see you guys at the next video.